NPCC orientation. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Lynette Plowden. I am the NPCC coordinator, one of the NPCC coordinators here at APhA, and then also on this webinar who will be doing majority of the talking is Ken Leibowitz. He'll give you more of an introduction about himself in a moment. I just want to go over the rules of the orientation of the webinar and kind of give you an insight on how the webinar works. Can you advance to the first slide, please? So everybody is in an audio mode, is in a muted mode, and right now you should be using your telephone, which is the best way to actually hear you. If you look on the side, you'll see a dial-in number and an access code, and that will be how you can get audio, and we can hear you once we do unmute you for questions at the end. If you want to use the mic and speakers, you can also use that, but the telephone kind of works it works better. To be respectful for others, always mute your own telephone or your microphone until you are able to speak, because if I unmute you by accident, then your conversation will come through. To ask questions, we're going to try to hold all questions to the end of the webinar. And if you look on the right-hand side of your control panel, you'll see a question and answer, a question box where you can type your questions in. If it's something real simple, I'll try to answer the questions in the box. But we'll try to hold all questions, and then I'll answer them out loud, or you can select the raise your hand button, and then we will give you an opportunity to ask those questions. So we're looking forward to a great orientation, and I'm going to turn it over to Ken.
Okay. Well, I'm very pleased to be here. My name is Ken Leibowitz. I'm on the faculty at the University of the Sciences. I've been doing this, both the orientation for many, many years and the counseling competition. This will be the 32nd year that I've done it. And I always like to start this presentation by saying two things. One, when you do meet me, please call me Ken. For the time that we're at the competition, I'm going to be the person to bring you in, to explain things to you, but I really appreciate being on a first name basis with you. When I start this orientation, I do like to say that we really have come a very long way. We started in 1985 and only had 50% of the schools participating. In those days, it was 31 schools. The reality, though, is we were very pleased because we didn't know if people were going to be interested in participating. However, once we got to 1988, the number of schools doubled. By 2008, the number of schools that participated in the NPCC tripled. By 2012, the number of schools quadrupled. So there has been continuing interest over the years, and including the group that is participating this year, 98% of all schools and colleges of pharmacy in the United States will be sending a representative to Baltimore to participate in the competition. So you will have stiff competition, but it also is saying something that still, after 32 years, there's still a significant level of interest in the patient counseling competition. So we start to get to why are we here, and it's a broader question that I like to begin with is why do we have the competition? Because you're part of a long legacy. There's a long tradition of people prior to you, and you're going to be part of that continuing legacy. Obviously and clearly, the primary goal of the competition is to help you become better patient educators. We've worked, very long and hard with schools and colleges of pharmacy, and I believe at this point we've calculated some 40,000 students over the years have participated in local competitions, and somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,400 students have actually come and participated in the national competition. Another reason we do the competition is to help demonstrate a very genuine commitment by your faculty, by your chapter advisors. Reality is very few students I find come to the competition without some support of people from their schools. A number of schools actually do a lot of work once the local winner has been identified to try and make sure when they show up at the national competition, this is like our March Madness. You are the representative of your school, and you are expected to be a good job, do a good job, but it's hard to do that without some support, so there is a level of commitment. I would be remiss if I do not say this story every year, because it is the honest truth that the competition started because of what a pharmacist in Philadelphia said to me. So please humor me and just listen for a moment. 1979, I was married in those days, and I was driving my wife back from an oral surgeon. She had 4 wisdom teeth out. She was in a lot of pain, and she had a pain med script that I brought into a pharmacy. And I asked the pharmacist just one simple question. I said, by the way, does this medication contain any codeine? Because my wife's very allergic to codeine. And he looked at me very sad and kind of annoyed, but he said, son, if you had any questions, you should have asked your physician. And I explained it wasn't for me and I wasn't really there. And he just looked and said, I get paid for filling prescriptions. I don't get paid for answering questions. And he walked away, and I walked away with the belief that this should not go on, that no patient should ever be treated that way. But what I found out from talking to colleagues at PCP in those days was normatively it wasn't that unusual for pharmacists not to be very communicative or at all communicative with patients. That in fact, it was the physician's responsibility to talk to patients about their drugs. It was the pharmacist's job to dispense the medication, but not counsel. And in all honesty, that's what motivated me to start working with other people to try and develop a local competition at PCP, which eventually became the National Patient Counseling Competition. So at one level, we really should thank a pharmacist in Philadelphia for us all being here. I also want to do a shout out to Lynette and the other good people at APhA-ASP for helping to ensure that the competition runs smoothly and seamlessly. There's been a lot of materials that are mailed out. There's a lot of documents that they have to get. And without Lynette's very able work, we wouldn't be here doing this. We're also here because of CVS Health. This is a very expensive competition to operate. Without their vision, without their support, we really would not be able to do this on a year in and year out basis. So it really is something that I'm very appreciative of their efforts. And finally, why are we here? There's one more reason. Whether it was a few weeks or a few months ago, you saw a sign up or you got an email about the competition. You made a decision at that point that you wanted to participate. Now, I know at a few schools it's a mandatory activity, but I'm not talking about that. You made a decision to say, I'd like to try and see if I could do this well. I don't think at that moment any of you said, I know for a fact in March I'll be sitting in Baltimore waiting to compete against about 125 other people. But you did. And I will ask you probably when I escort you into the room, I will ask you, why did you win your school's competition? And the number one answer I get from people, I was lucky. In fact, one guy raised the cuffs of his pants and said, lucky socks, that's why I'm here. But the issue in my mind is you're here because of one indisputable fact, and that is because you are effective at counseling patients. And whether you've admitted to yourself or not, you do possess the knowledge and attitudes and skills that do allow you to really effectively counsel patients. Now, this competition is tough. There's a lot of people participating. I, at this moment, and you at this moment, don't know how the results will turn out, but you should feel very proud of your accomplishments to get here to be able to participate. Now, for many years, we ran the competition by simply mailing documents out to students and expecting them to show up bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, ready to go. And what we started to find was people would show up at the competition with lots of questions and concerns and worries. And so we ran an orientation session probably, I would imagine, for at least 10 years, Thursday night and Friday night. But the reality finally hit us that Some students just can't get there, whether they're coming from the opposite coast, whether they have work or exams. And so that's why this particular webinar has been developed. And what we're going to try and do in the remaining time is to really, in a very concrete, step-by-step manner, go over all of the rules and procedures because, and this leads into the second goal, I firmly believe the more familiar you are with what to expect when you show up in Baltimore, the further it reduces any stress or worries or concerns. It's like starting a new job. If you know what to expect the first day, it does remove a lot of those stressors from your mindset. And finally tonight, we have a dedicated session at the end of the program for you to be able to ask questions. And we want you to ask all the questions that are on your mind. But as I'm talking, if you do have questions, write them down so that later on, either verbally or through the chat mechanism or through the type question mechanism, you'd have an opportunity to be able to pose that question. And again, my view is if you have a question, probably somebody else listening also has a question. So bear with me. This is very anal, very concrete, but I want to take you from step one, what to expect when you get in Baltimore. Step one, we ask that you do show up at the competition office, which is in the Hilton, the APhA room, about 10 minutes early. Now, if you're already sitting there going, where's the APhA room? I have the same question. I'll be asking somebody in the lobby or the concierge desk how to get to the APhA room. But we need you there early, in part because there are no makeups for missed filming sessions. So you should know at this point if you're going on Friday or Saturday and what your time is, get there a little bit early. Now, because I'm somewhat clairvoyant, some of you have some questions already, and let me see if I can hit on those. Don't worry if you're getting there at the last moment. You don't have to have your badge and meeting materials before actually competing. You can do that later. So don't worry about that. About your attire, most people do show up for guys in a shirt and tie. Women will wear dresses or a blouse and a skirt. The only thing that I like to point out to female contestants, participants, is there is going to be a wireless FM mic that you're going to have to put on. So you're going to need some lapel or something to attach it to. There's also a box for the wireless FM mic. And so if you don't have a belt to clip it on, or if you don't have a lab coat with a pocket, it makes for an awkward situation. So wear what you want. I would say I would characterize it as professional or professional business attire. The issue about lab coats is in the preliminary round, we don't require people to wear lab coats. Do the majority of people have a lab coat? Yes, they do. But in the final round, it is expected and required for you to have a lab coat. Indeed, in years gone by, people forget them. Other people are usually willing to loan them to another participant. But I would just encourage you to pack it. It will help out. And of course, each and every one of you will get in the 10 finalists final round, so you need to have your lab coat. One final preliminary issue is sometimes, not everybody, but some people bring an entourage. You know, it could be a friend, a significant other, faculty member, even a dean. You're more than welcome to have them come with you and sit in the competition office as you're waiting to participate. But once it comes time for you to actually do the filming, they are not allowed in the filming room. So please, if you feel it would be good for support and encouragement, bring people with you, but they won't be allowed to go on after the competition office. Step two is when you get into the competition office, there's a couple forms for you to fill out. One, we want to know where you'll be staying in Baltimore. There's also going to be a video release form that we need you to sign. On top of that, you'll be given a flash drive that you're going to be bringing with you into the filming room. I want to just do a little digression. For years, a lot of participants, came up to me and said, I really would like to get feedback on my preliminary round counseling. And the reality is we simply can't. There's too many of you, and it's not fair to the judges. They're going to be judging the whole time. So what we decided to do a number of years ago is to say we want to give you a recording of the preliminary round counseling session for you to take back to your school, for you to find, say, a faculty member that you trust and you value their opinion, and simply play the session for them. Let that person provide some feedback to you. Because the alternative, which is having one of the judges sit with you, is just simply not practical given the number of participants in the counseling competition. Step 3, eventually I will come to the competition office door and I'll call your name out. Now, sometimes people do go to the bathroom and I miss them. That's okay, but I will call your name. I'll escort you down the hall. We have 3 filming rooms going on. So I'll bring you into the designated filming room. Make sure you remember to bring your flash drive. It's not on screen, but I want to just point out, in years gone by, we said you're not allowed to bring any materials into the room. Some people have said I don't feel comfortable leaving my purse in the competition office. I have an iPad, I have a laptop. You can bring it into the filming room, but very immediately we'll ask you to put it to the side. But I do want to point out that if you did prepare in advance any notes or materials on the medications listed on the top, on the drug list, you won't be allowed to use those in the competition. So again, if you bring them in the room, you will simply put those off to the side. Step 4, once I bring you inside the room, I'd just like to introduce you to all the people you're going to be working with. One is the person who will play the patient picking up the prescription. I'll introduce you, so there's no confusion, I'll introduce you to them by their real name, but they're going to change their name in just a moment. I'll introduce you to a member of the film crew, and you'll be giving them your flash drive. At that point, we have this very high-tech wicker basket filled with prescriptions, and I'll ask you to select one of the prescriptions, open it up, read it, and then share the information with the person playing the patient. So just read them the name that's written on the prescription as well as the medication. At that point, usually the film people, they go behind a curtain. Some of the patients, they'll just sit down or go out of the room. But at that point, we're going to step 5, which is I'm going to spend a few moments with you in the room, have you sit down at the counseling table, and I will talk to you about the 3 stages of the competition, offering you as much opportunity to ask any questions that you might have. And then once I leave the room, then you'll get underway. So let me just talk for a moment about what to expect for stage 1, 2, and 3 of the competition portion. You'll have 5 minutes to conduct research on your prescription. We will have in a back table filled with prescriptions 1 with your drug product clearly labeled with the patient's name on it. In addition, there'll be a blue binder with patient profiles in it, and there will be 1 profile clearly marked and indicated with your patient's name on it. In the morning when we set it up, they will be alphabetically arranged. I can't promise you later in the day if they will be still alphabetically arranged, because some people do take the patient profile out when they're doing the counseling. But the bottom line, it will be in that blue binder. Also on the table for your research, we'll have a pad, we'll have pens to enable you to take notes, and just about everybody takes notes while they're doing their research. This year, what we have available for reference material are 3 different options. You can use the drug information handbook, the drug facts and comparison, or the iPad with LexiDrugs. The only thing that, and I found this out in the last few years, some students are not familiar just organizationally with one of the books. They just said, we really haven't used these before. please, before you come to the competition, take a look at one of these just in case you feel that this would provide the best source of information for you. You'll have 5 minutes to do your research. Don't worry about the timing. One of the video people will keep track of your time. They'll yell out to you, for the research phase. They'll yell out, you have 1 minute to go, and if need be, they'll say to you, please stop your research. That moves you to stage 2, which is a setting up phase. This is not timed. It's going to be an opportunity for you to set out on the table where you counsel any and all materials that you think you might want to use. Now, let me just show you 2 pictures of prior participants. The person in the top right picture clearly is a maximalist. They've got the drug reference, they've got the patient profile, they've got the drug product, they've got their notes. Everything is laid out before them. The other individual on the left is more of the minimalist. They've got their drug product laid out, they've got some notes, and perhaps the prescription. The bottom line is during the setup, I want you to really put all materials that you think you might desire to use on the table so they're readily available when you start to counsel. On top of that, we'll ask you to position the chairs in a way that you find most conducive to your style of counseling. Now, I want to say the video people will work with you on this because sometimes people put their chairs too far apart, a little too much at an angle where they're not going to catch on camera your face. So position the chairs in the way that you feel is best, and then they'll work with you to maybe just tilt them a little bit. On top of that, what's going to happen during the setup phase is one of the video folks will help you on with your wireless FM mic. They'll do a sound check, and then they're going to ask you to do an identification on camera. In effect, little movie stuff. The camera operator will go 3, 2, 1, action. And you're going to look at our hidden camera, smile sweetly, and say, hi, my name is, and I am from, state your school affiliation. And then the camera operator might say, cut. What I would really like you to do at that moment is to press an internal pause button. Now, I don't know if this will translate over a webinar, but it goes like this. Do one of those deep breaths. Really focus yourself. Double check at that moment if everything is in front of you, because we do have some people that forget the drug product. Kind of useful when you're going to counsel the patient. Just make sure it's there and it's ready. Once you're ready to begin, let the camera operator know, and then they're going to ask you for the counseling portion to stand up. What we've done in the last few years is put tape on the floor to position or show you the position where you're going to stand and face the patient. There'll be a similar mark for the patient to stand at. And you're going to wait for the camera operator one more time to go 3, 2, 1, action. And the counseling portion will begin with the patient initiating the conversation. Patient is going to approach you and say something like, hi, I'm here to pick up a prescription. And now your 5 minutes of counseling begins. During the 5 minutes when you're counseling the patient, we do not have any reservations, any restrictions. We want you to counsel the patient in the way you feel most effective doing. The only thing that we're going to do is keep you on track with a 5-minute clock. You can't see it on camera. It'll be positioned a little bit off, but there is a digital clock that will be counting down from 5 to 0. For the first 4 minutes, on the top of the clock, there'll be a green lamp. At 1 minute to go, the lamp switches to yellow. And because we've just found many people aren't really focusing on the clock, the camera operator will probably bang a metal pole. It's not high tech, but it works. At least once, maybe twice, just to let you know that you've got a minute left. And finally, at the end of 5 minutes, you're going to hear, if you're still going strong, you're going to hear the camera operator go cut. And that concludes the end of the counseling phase. Now, I just have a few suggestions just humor me. Again, I teach, and so I want to see you all do well. So here's a few things that I would suggest to all of you. You've got the 10 drug list. In a moment, I'm going to talk about what the judges are going to be listening for. You need to make sure, I believe it's 8 points, that you are conversant, effective, professional, and knowledgeable about those 8 points about any of those 10 drugs. So you have the list, use the list to prepare yourself for the competition. 2, when I say focus on the person, you're going to be in a room with pretty strong movie lights. They heat up the room, they're blinding. There's an awkwardness of knowing there's going to be some people behind a curtain videotaping you. My suggestion is you narrow your focus down just to your patient. Don't be thinking about any of the other issues, just I'm here to help this individual. 3, don't assume the person picking up the prescription is the patient for whom the prescription is written. That's going to be something you need to determine very quickly as you start the counseling session. 4, yes, you need to review the patient profile. Don't take an inordinate amount of time going over the information on the profile. I'm also going to ask you to remember these are actors. I don't think all of them will memorize particularly their phone number and their home address. So I'd suggest to you either reading the phone number and their address to them and saying, is this still accurate? Or, even more efficient, showing them the profile. It's on the table between you and saying, is this information still current? That would at least save some awkward moments if in fact they haven't memorized it. Number 5, my suggestion is it is eminently possible to provide written information to the patient. This is in some ways a role play. If you have taken notes during your research phase and near the end of your counseling session, you use your notes as if it's a drug information sheet, hand it to the patient. They are not going to say to you, why are you handing me this scribbled sheet? Same thing as if you rip off a small piece of paper and at the very end of your session, you hand them the small piece of paper and say, this is my business card. If you have any questions, they're not going to challenge you or question you. That's not required, it's not mandatory, but a number of people do provide written information. Number 6 is you can show the drug product, you can make it clear to the patient what it looks like, but please do not ask the patient to use the product before they leave. That is just simply something that we can't permit or won't allow. And finally, the time cue issue is just something I have to stress. It's rare for people, at 4 minutes or 3 minutes, but you should make at least 1 or 2 kind of breakaways just to make sure, where you are, you're going to probably have in your notes that you're taking a kind of organizational schema of what you want to talk about. If you get down to the clang 1 minute to go time cue, please do not just continue going on about some additional side effects, because my presumption is you do have some way, personal style of how you conclude a session, how you like to end it, provide some degree of closure, because the reality is you will get cut off at the end of 5 minutes. And one last thing. I don't know why every year this happens. Please don't write on the prescription that you have or the patient profile. It really does slow a lot of things up because we've got to go and get some additional ones. I don't know if it's nervous habit or people scribbling. Just don't write on the prescription or the profile. All right, now back to step 6. Once the filming is completed, I'm going to ask everybody if you could return the room to the state it was in when you walked in. So if you've taken the drug references, put them back. Put the prescription product back. Put your patient profile back in alphabetical order. And if you do, as you will most likely have notes, just throw them away in the trash can before you leave. The other thing is please remember to get your flash drive back and take it with you as you leave the room. Sometimes I'll be outside waiting for you. I'll escort you back to the competition office. Other times I might be in another filming room doing the introduction with somebody else. So I apologize if I'm not going to be there, but it's just simply a matter of there's 3 rooms. I can't always time it correctly. Step 7, what we'd like you to do is go back to the competition office. There is a survey we're going to ask you to fill out. There is a departing contestant gift, an NPCC t-shirt. And the other thing is, while you're sitting there, the video techs are going to very quickly review your video to see if there's a problem with it or not. If I come back for you, then there was a problem. But if I don't come for you in, like, say, 3 minutes, don't worry about it. The filming was good. And at that point, you're really free to go enjoy the rest of the day. Step 8, just want to make sure you understand we'll do some posting outside the competition office, but it will also be posted electronically around 6 p.m. on Saturday. I believe last year it was a little bit after 6 and there was a lot of antsy people waiting, but usually somewhere in the ballpark, a little before or a little bit after 6 on Saturday. And one last thing. I want you all, raise your right hand and make a pledge. This is a competition. Some of you, particularly those going on Friday, you will have gone through the process. People who are going, say, on Saturday could clearly benefit if you share any information that gives them an advantage. Because this is a competition, I do ask you to swear that you'll keep it confidential until 6 p.m. on Saturday. Once we post the finalist list, feel free to talk to anybody, everybody. It's fine. But what we want to make sure is the competition is fair. And if you are an early participant and you share the information, it really does help out later people. And in fact, it might really harm you because people do have some added knowledge. All right, I'm going to do this quickly because this is just, to me, if you're doing, I don't care if it's a paper, if it's an assignment, or a patient counseling competition, you need to know what's the rubric that the judges are going to use to evaluate your performance while you're doing your counseling session. They're going to judge you in these 4 areas, and just to make it clear, there are 10 counseling points that they're going to be looking at your performance. They will judge it either 2 points, yes, you did it, or 0, no, you did not do it. For professional competence counseling session, there are 6 items. They're going to be looking at you, judging you on a 0 to 5 scale, 5 being high. For your communication ability, there's 7 specific behaviors they're going to be looking for. And then finally, they'll judge, and this is more subjective, it's a general overall evaluation. I just want to touch on a few of these for the 4 areas. First, do not, again, assume the patient is the patient. The patient might be the neighbor, the parent, somebody else. You need to make sure that you're identifying the patient. You can identify yourself as the pharmacist, as the student pharmacist, but you need to do a self-identification. Items 3 through 10 are what I was referring to earlier about studying the 10 drugs. You should be able to be professional, convincing, clear about these issues. So do your homework on these, and then you'll be prepared for any of the drugs that are on the prescription that you pull. When it comes to professional competence, the actual counseling session, some of these items will be covered if you have learned the Indian Health Service 3' question and final verification technique. But the bottom line, you need to make sure you hit each one of these criteria. There's no problem if, say, during the profile review, you say to the patient, is this your phone number? Is this still accurate? It's a close-ended question, But if throughout the entire counseling session you're just using close-ended questions, you will be hurt on item 14. Item 15, it's the old standard final verification, just to make sure I didn't leave anything out. How are you going to take this medication when you get home? That might not be the only feedback you're seeking from the patient, but you need to have some demonstration that you're doing a final verification. And item 16 summarizes the key points. This is a time that I find that some people realize they left out one of those counseling points that they might have forgotten to mention, storage or number of refills. By emphasizing key points, you might be able to backtrack and include that information there. The opportunity for follow-up, that might be a good time for you to give out your business card or talk about how the phone number for the pharmacy is on the prescription product. In terms of your communication ability, general techniques, I think 17 and 18 are pretty straightforward. I want to be clear about 19. Uses language the patient is likely to understand. The issue here is you're not in a therapeutics lab. And you got to make sure you're not talking to another PharmD. You are talking to a patient, and you must adapt your language in an appropriate way. I believe firmly number 20 is crucial. If you don't have the direct eye contact on the patient, if your face is not of an appropriate demeanor, if your tone of voice does not express concern, bottom line, from the judge's standpoint, you might not be manifesting some of the professionalism that they're seeking in somebody who should be the top finalist in this competition. Number 22, an understanding or empathetic response could easily be, I understand, or better, it sounds to me like this is really frustrating to you. It sounds, I remember last year in our final round, the patient shared that her mother had just died. And for any participant to ignore that, say, now let me tell you about your refills, would have been clearly inappropriate behavior, because you need to be able to respond in a caring, compassionate way to your patient. And 23, there will be some challenge to you. I can't say what, is it going to be a very talkative patient, a very shy patient, an angry patient, but they're going to do something. And if you just let them continue to talk without trying to get control back in an appropriate way, that will harm you in terms of the judge's assessment. And finally, as I said earlier, there is one final rating that it's more subjective, but the judges are going to be basing it on overall what they saw, what they heard, and matching it to what they see as a most appropriate, effective counseling performance. All right, I'm getting close here. So you're going to ask questions in a little bit, but I have this one last thing I just have to do. We strive to do a seamless, no problem competition. Our goal is to make sure every one of you, when you participate, you are treated fairly and we see the best you have to offer. Having said that, I will ask you in your mind's eye to think back what Murphy's Law is. And I hear it. It is, if it can go wrong, it will. Now, having run this competition 31 times, this will be the 32nd, I just thought I'd share with you some of what I call the gremlins or glitches that have shown up over these past years, and how it's not always enabled us to provide that seamless competition that we seek. So what are they? And just bear with me. Here we go. Hotel fire alarm going off during your videotape session. A movie light explodes, and trust me on this one, it sounds like a shotgun blast going off. As you're there trying to talk to this patient, a hotel employee walks in looking to change water or garbage, and it really becomes a distraction. This was California a number of years ago. Slight earthquake during the videotaping. the patient was upset, the video people were, I was upset. The student pharmacists continued to counsel as if nothing was going on, but we really felt it really provided enough that we needed to take a second look at that counseling session. I think about 3 years ago, when we were still using DVD cassettes, we got the wrong labels and they would just stick in the video cassette player, and that caused everything to stop. And then there was, back in the days when we were doing VHS videotape, I don't know if you even remember them, but it's basically a reel of video going across being recorded on. It was bad, and the video operator didn't notice it, and they had to redo the whole session. As well as the year the video tech just forgot to press record. So the student counseled for 5 minutes, and then we had to share with the student, oh, by the way, you're going to have to do that again. As well as a couple of years, we've had the problem of the microphone, the wireless FM mic. It goes bad. Well, the battery ran out. So I do encourage the video technicians to swap out the batteries at least once an hour, but it really presents a problem if the judges aren't able to hear you when they're trying to evaluate you. I'm not done yet. Patients are doing their performance over and over and over. So one time the student said, I'm Jim Smith, I filled your prescription, and you are? And the patient looked at him and said, I don't know who I am. And it really threw the student, so we had to redo that one. My favorite of all of the years occurred in Nashville when the hotel that we were staying in was right next to an interstate. And it's back in the day, if you guys remember, CB radios. What happened was the wireless FM mics were on the same frequency as the CB radios that truckers were using. So I heard the judges laughing, and I went in and they said, you got to hear this. So you see the student saying, sir, you need to take this medication 3 times a day, and then the trucker bled in, Foxy, mama, what's your 1020? So, as I said, we try for a seamless competition. It doesn't always work. And even if none of these happen, be prepared for the biggest glitch that does happen most years. Hold your ears. And that's us falling behind on our filming schedule. And so if in fact any of these happen to you, if in fact we are delayed for any number of reasons, I want to here and now apologize in advance to every one of you. The issue in my mind is, if a problem does occur, I want to know about it. Please, if something happened, again, an employee walks in during your filming session and it really rattles you, don't just go home upset. Let me know, and what we're going to do is a very quick discussion with the video people to make sure that there's enough valid video that the judges could fairly evaluate you. If it was in the last 5 seconds, that's one issue. If it happened early on and it caused you to really not perform well, what we would most likely do is make the decision to have you redo the counseling session. If it does happen, you'll do the same patient with the same prescription, and we'll film you again. Clearly, that would put us behind schedule, but to me, that is worth it to ensure that each of you is indeed treated fairly. So here's my conclusion. When I've really thought about as many years, as many winners as I've seen, what could I offer you in terms of what does it take to be the winner of the competition? And I guess because I am a film buff, I do go back to say what it takes to win the competition comes from these 3 folks. A little variation. I think you do need not just the brain, you need the competence, both the drug knowledge but also the communication competence. As I said earlier, this is not you being tested on your drug knowledge. It's you being examined with respect to your ability to communicate effectively to a patient. Like the Cowardly Lion, you need to have confidence in what you say and how you say it. If you're tentative, if you're hesitant, if you're not looking at the patient, if you don't sound like you're confident, that will reflect in terms of the judge's evaluation. I do recommend to people, if you've never heard of her, Professor Amy Cuddy she was at Harvard Business School at the time. She has a couple YouTube videos, but she encourages people to fake it till you make it. But you need to understand what you need to project in order to be confident. And finally, you need a heart. You need compassion. You need to be able to express that level of empathy and concern for a patient. And when you put these all three together, confidence, confidence, and compassion, then you will be a winner and make it to the top 10. So I'll leave you with this last quote that I think Louis Pasteur said: "Chance favors the prepared mind." I'm not all that up on random chance. What I do prefer is this one: good luck happens when preparation meets opportunity. Here's the issue. You have a lot of information now. You know what to expect when you get there. You have these 10 drugs and the opportunity to say, what are the judges going to be looking for when I do talk to this patient about any of these drugs? If you do the preparation and you meet your opportunity when you're in Baltimore, I guarantee you're going to make your own good luck happen. So I am looking forward to meeting each and every one of you personally, but now what I'd like to do is turn it over to you and Lynette to see what kinds of questions that people do have.
All right. Thank you, Ken, for your great presentation. It was some great information. I hope the students really took advantage of it. We do have a couple of questions, and I will read the ones that we had. The first one, give me one second. If someone makes it to the top 10, will they be able to get feedback from the judges since there will only be 10? The answer to this is still the same as the prelim round. Still take your video, which you will see. We post all of the top 10 videos on thepharmacist.com under NPCC. And once that goes up there, then still take that, go to your favorite professor or somebody at your school, and have them look it over with you and kind of grade yourself on the criteria. The judges have a really tough job of judging. For preliminary round, they have 134 students that they're looking at videos for 2 days. And then our final round judges, that's the toughest of them all because they have to actually pick the winner from this 10. So it's a real tough job, and we definitely want to kind of give them their space when doing that. So we definitely say still take it back to your professor at school and let them look at it and kind of grade you. Our next question is, can you bring the iPad with you and the reference books with you when you're counseling? Anything in that room that you want to use once you make your notes, you can keep the iPad there with you and use that as part of your notes. You have the opportunity to do whatever you want with those references in that 5 minutes, and then you also can use them during the actual counseling session. We had one more question. Do you still need to attend the on-site orientation since you attended the webinar tonight? We do recommend it. The on-site orientation, this year we're giving everybody an opportunity to have both. If you see fit to get there in time to have the on-site orientation, but we understand with flights and travel and it may not work out that way. But definitely try to take advantage of the on-site orientation if you're there, because you'll have an opportunity to network, which we know students love to network with other students, as well as you get an opportunity to actually see the filming room and the lights, and actually see the references, see how the profile book is laid out. We kind of set the table up like a little pharmacy, so you'll get to see all that, and you get to look at the references, the actual reference books, and see how things are laid out in the book, and you'll also be able to look at the iPad and see how the Lexi drug subscription is laid out on the iPad. So definitely take advantage of it if you can, and if not, and you attended this webinar, if you have questions, after this webinar is over, feel free definitely to email me, and we will definitely get you the answers you need. And then, when will the top 10 round take place? So the top 10 will be posted on Saturday night at 6, and then the top 10 will compete Sunday morning, and the first person to compete will be at that 9 a.m. time, and we go every 20 minutes up until 12 o'clock. Depending on, we will list you in alphabetical order, so if your name is Adams or starts with an A, you will probably be in that 9, 9, 10, 9:20 time, 9:40 time, and if your name is lower in the alphabet, you'll probably be at the later time. We just listed alphabetical to make it easier that way. It's not by, you're not listed by your scores, it's all alphabetical for the top 10, and you compete Sunday morning. We had a couple of more questions. So if you're also a delegate for your chapter and you make it as a finalist, will you be able to make it to the House of Delegates session and the final round? According to when your time is, you may have to let your alternate know for your chapter, and your alternate can sit in until you're able to get there. The next one is, will there be a timer counting down that we can see while we do the counseling, or is it just a green and yellow signal? It is a timer that will count down, so when you're doing your 5 minutes of preparation, it will count down from 5 all the way down to 0, and then during your actual counseling, it will count down again, and the lights will change colors, right, Ken?
Let me just add to that. It goes like this. The video people will say, you know, where are you going to sit? Some people, for personal preference, like to sit on the right side. Other people say, no, the other side gives me a better profile. Regardless, position the clock on the table so that you can sneak a peek at it. It's going to be there. It's small, but you can put it in your line of sight so that it won't be that difficult just to break eye contact with the patient for a moment, and then you'll be able to see the clock. And even if you can't see the numbers, you're going to see the lights. And as long as it's green, you know you've got the time.
All right. We got another question. Ken, I'll let you answer this one. It's comparing the minimalist to the maximalist. If both participants scored equally in terms of drug information, would any preference be given to the minimalist, or not having all those resources immediately in front of the participant?
Absolutely not. In fact, I think the winner last year was a maximalist. It's just a personal issue. Some people have the materials there, but don't really refer to them. So, you know, they've got facts and comparisons open to the appropriate page, but they don't look at it. It's, for some people, a security blanket. You will have to have the profile. You will have to have your notes. You will have to have the prescription product. But beyond that, if you have all the materials out, I don't think any judge would evaluate you negatively. Remember, they're sticking to the criteria that are listed on that evaluation sheet, and there is nothing on the sheet that says had too many materials before them. So don't worry about that one.
All right. Next, does this webinar take the place of the orientation in Baltimore? If this is enough for you and you're not going to be able to make it to Baltimore, then definitely that's fine. But for the orientation in Baltimore, but if you can make it, we definitely recommend that you attend it. Here's another one, Ken, that I think you can answer. Are the indications of the drugs given on the prescription?
I don't believe so.
No, they're not. All
No.
right, next. Around what score on the rubric cuts off the top 10 finalists from the rest?
Varies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the highest score overall, everything combined down. It can vary.
Yeah, I mean, we have years where it's very tight grouping, and other years, you know, on the top 10, in my recollection, is there's some years where one or two people really stand out from the crowd, yet when it comes to the final round, the scores can be very much switched around. That just because somebody scored the highest in the preliminary round doesn't guarantee at all that they're going to be a winner in the final round.
All right. Our next question, are we going to be counseling adult patients or could we be required to counsel pediatric patients as well? All patients are over 18.
That's the best way to express it.
No children. Will the webinar be posted for review at a later date? Yes, it will be posted on pharmacist.com under NPCC. Give me a day or so to get it up there, but it will be loaded up there within the next couple of days. When will the final round filming be, and will we randomly select the drug the same way as the preliminary round?
Yes.
It is the same process.
Yeah, everything that I said about how it's going to be, I'll come get you, I'll bring you down, all those stages, except there'll just be 10 of you instead of 134. And it's going to be in the
Next,
same location.
yeah, same location. Is the orientation prior to the day we will be doing our preliminary rounds mandatory? Same question. So not mandatory, definitely recommended that you do come if you're able to. If not, and you attended this webinar and you feel that's sufficient, we understand.
I'll just, my 2 cents. I find some people really enjoy the social aspect of seeing and talking with people from other schools. It's a very large meeting, and here you get to interact with people who are also equally participating in the competition. And the second thing that Lynette said, and I'll second it, when you sit in the room and we will turn the movie lights on, you'll see how we try to disguise the camera. I just think it's one more of those pieces to cut down on the potential lack of familiarity with what to expect. You're there, you can see it, you can feel it. It does take some of the concern away of what it's going to be like. On the other hand, I know I was 100% effective in communicating this information, in which case probably you don't need to come to it. But in my mind, I would like to cover all bases. So I'll leave it up to you. I don't think it can hurt to come to the on-site orientation.
Okay. Our next one, on the patient profile, medication history, including the OTC herbal or vitamins.
Yes, if it is applicable to the patient that you have.
If we can't make the in-person orientation, will we be able to see the counseling room before the competition? You'll be able to see it when he brings you in there for your competition time. Unfortunately, just during the orientation is the only time we give you to actually see the room, other than when you go in to actually do your actual competition.
Unless they're going on Saturday, then they could come to the orientation
on Friday. So everybody that has an appointment on Friday, your on-site orientation will be Thursday, and everybody that has a appointment on Friday, on Saturday, then your orientation will be on Friday. So the Saturday people, you can come to either Thursday or Friday, but the Friday people, you only have the Thursday time to come. All right, let's see the next question. We answered about the time clock counting down. Where do we find the list of 10 drugs to prepare ahead of time? An email was sent last Friday to all participants. If you did not get that email, please shoot me an email and I will forward it to you again. But it was sent last Friday evening around 5 p.m. and it came from my email address, lplowden@aphanet.org. So just please check your email, check your junk mail, but it was sent with everything, rules and regulations, the top 10 drug list, everything you need to know about the competition, the location, where you need to go, where you need to show up. Everything is in there. Will the top 10 compete with the same drugs from the first competition, preliminary round? Yes, they will compete. It's the same drugs for prelim and final round.
Yeah.
And will we be able to write notes on the scratch paper and use them during the counseling session? Yes, you will be able to.
100%.
Anything you write down during that 5 minutes of prep, you can definitely use. You just can't bring notes in that you had and studied with into the competition and used those?
I know some students in the past have said, in their local competition, they were not allowed to take notes during research. And I appreciate that, and that does test you at a certain level. We don't have that restriction. So if you take notes, and I encourage you to do it, and I encourage you to even organize it, make it, 1, 2, 3, 4 things that I'm going to cover, use those while you counsel the patient. Give them to the patient, but throw them away when you leave the room.
All right, next. Are the drugs divided between the preliminary and final round, or is it possible to have the same drug in both rounds? Ken?
I guess it would be possible.
Yeah, it is possible, but it's only going to be from those 10 drugs.
Yeah.
Next, are each of us evaluated by the same judge? If not, how many different judges are there? So for the preliminary round, it's 5 judges, and then for the final round, it's a whole different 5 judges. So everybody in prelim is getting evaluated by the same 5 judges, and then everybody in the final round is getting evaluated by a whole different set of 5 judges. Will we have to know about any interactions or OTC questions from the patient, etc.?
I will put it this way. There is nothing either in the prescription or the profile or what the patient says to you that would preclude you from dispensing this medication. In years gone by, some people have said, it's like, hold, I would have to call the doctor. Your thinking is wrong if you believe that. This is a legitimate prescription. There is not an interaction that would cause you to call the physician. There might be some concerns that you want to talk about with the patient, but there would be nothing that would say that you should not dispense this medication.
All right. Next, are we only going to be counseling on FDA-approved indications for this top medication?
I'd have to say yes. I don't know how else to answer that.
Yeah.
Again, this is not like a therapeutics class. We're not trying to trick you, trying to find very, very specific information. Predominantly, this is a competition that allows you to demonstrate your communication ability as a patient educator. Obviously, you need to have the drug knowledge to be able to fulfill that role. But if you're really concerned that your drug knowledge might not be sufficient, I will say we have had people in prior years who were P1s who did make it to the top 10 in large part because they did have very superior communication ability.
All right. Are the particular challenges different in preliminary versus final round?
Yes. We try to make the final round a little more difficult. For example, last year I thought it was difficult. You're there, you have your notes, you're ready to counsel on, I think it was an antidepressant med if I'm not mistaken, and all of a sudden the patient, and she was good, she just could start crying. Well, you have a crying person before you. How do you manage that particular challenge? So you probably won't get somebody crying this year, but you'll get some other state that will challenge your ability to interact effectively.
All right. Would the final round also have one of the selected drugs that were emailed out? Yes.
Yes.
Is it the same drug list? Yes. Will there be drug interactions that we need to counsel patients on?
You should counsel the patient as you do your research on any adverse drug reactions they should be concerned about, but if your thinking is, based on their patient profile, there's a drug interaction that, again, makes it inappropriate for you to dispense this drug, that is not going to happen.
Next, if the medication is a device, should we teach and demonstrate how to use the device, such as Nasonex and Symbicort?
Yes, you should. But again, it's got to be within the 5 minutes, and you are not. You are not, I repeat. This is both from experience with somebody who was going to get the patient to demonstrate after she showed a vaginal suppository. It is a good teaching technique, but definitely not appropriate. The same as I don't want a patient years gone by with an inhaler because the patient it does not have asthma and we don't want them taking it. So yes, talk about the product, talk about how to use it, but the bottom line is the patient should not be asked to actually use it before they leave.
Next. If you can't get to the on-site orientation at the beginning, is it okay to come late? Yes.
Yeah.
Ken will do some talking, and then we will take everybody up to the filming room. So you can definitely show up late and still get the benefits of the orientation.
I'm not nearly
Is
as thorough in the live one.
They just asked, is the on-site orientation structured or is it more open house type format? Ken will talk in the beginning, kind of giving the same information, and then we will take you up to the actual filming room.
And some years people will stay around for a very long time asking questions, um, sharing their local experience, your local competition experience. But I found that people tend to stay for a while, in part because I think they are networking with the other individuals.
Next, can we practice a session with other students during the orientation?
Yeah, I'm not sure where you're going with that question.
Yeah. If you're saying, can we do like a practice run of a session, unfortunately we won't be able to do that, but you will be able to see the room, see the profiles, look at the resources and kind of try to get yourself prepared. But as far as doing like a practice session at the orientation, we won't really be able to do that at the orientation.
You could go out in the hallway and do that with somebody, but not with the movie lights on, because at least typically there's a lot of people in the filming room when we go upstairs, and it just wouldn't be practical to do that.
And you won't be able to remove the resources from the
Yeah.
filming room either. Since we will be selecting a prescription for the competition, does that mean some contestants will counsel on different medications even though it's the same round?
Even though
Yes,
what?
so I guess even though it's the same round. So basically,
Oh,
everybody's going to pick out of this bowl a prescription. It could be one of the 10 drugs associated with that prescription, and it's a different one for each one.
yeah.
Again, will the drug list be the same? Yes. Will the orientation be the full 2 hours? Give or take, yes. We do have an open question and answer part once we're in the filming room. What identification do we need to complete the NPCC form? I'm not sure as to what form you're asking about. If you can
You don't need
type your
your
question.
badge or anything.
Yeah, you don't need anything to get into and check into for the competition. You just ask your name, and then you sign in, and we give you some papers to fill out. But it's nothing big. It's basically the release and confidentiality form that you fill out, and then you wait until Ken come and get you, and then afterwards you fill out a survey for us. The same question, if you receive the same drug as the first round, as the second round, and the final round, it's just something that happens, but your patient will more than
Yeah.
likely may be different.
Yeah.
Will definitely be different from the final and preliminary round.
Just to
Also,
share with you guys, it's not only a drug list that gets developed, the profile gets developed and a whole scenario for the patients. And I should say these are quote unquote, these are professional patients. This is from med school, I'm assuming, Lynette?
yes, from the University of Maryland standardized patients, yes, from their medical school.
Right. So, they're skilled at being able to manifest a variety of attributes, and also, we're giving them a whole backstory. So they're going to be somebody, not just a person blankly sitting before you.
All right, our next question, due to internet connection difficulties, you wasn't able to hear about the iPad. So the iPad will have LexiDrug subscription on it, and you'll be able to use that as a resource, as well as we'll have 2 actual books there, the drug factor comparisons as well as the drug information handbook. So you will be able to use all 3 of those resources, or you may just be familiar with the one, so therefore you would choose the one and use that. How many minutes do we have for the research phase? It's 5 minutes.
Yep.
Are the scores averaged between the 5 judges, or does one contestant get assigned 1 judge? All judges will vote on the 1 person. So each student will have 5 different scores, 1 from each judge.
And then do you total those up, or do you average those?
We total it up. We average it up.
Okay.
Do we all counsel on the same drug? No. In the final round, yes, but not in the prelim round. Will scratch paper be provided, or can we bring our own? We'll have notepads in there that you can use to write your notes on.
The only thing I've let people do when they say I have a lucky pen, you can use your lucky pen. But clearly, our biggest concern, we do not want people to do a large amount of research in advance, have notes, or in an electronic form bring anything in. Then that way they don't have to do anything during the research phase. That's totally unacceptable. The other thing we do ask is if you do bring, say, a person or a bag in, please turn off all of your electronic devices before the session begins.
Should we be in professional dress and bring a white coat to the on-site orientation session? Is business casual for the orientation. If you just are getting in and you have on jeans and a shirt and you're coming in from your flight, that's fine. For the actual competition, you are going to be filmed, so we do ask that you have a lab coat or be in professional dress.
Let me just add one little thing, because I'm getting like a strange vibe. For the orientation session, this is for you. You want to come in flip-flops and shorts. That is great. You want to come in 15 minutes late. That's okay. You need to leave early. That's okay. I'm going to be in the orientation session because I really believe anything that I might be able to share with people to help minimize any worries or concerns can help them do a better job. So ultimately, the issue is show up early or late, but the idea is if you think it can benefit you, by all means, please show up.
All right. And last year, everyone had the same drug in the final round. Was that a coincidence, or is that how the final round is set up? So the final round does have the same drug. You can see that from the video. The prelim round, you could choose one of the 10 drugs. Could the patient be breastfeeding or pregnant?
I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no.
We'll go with Ken's.
That was a good question. That was out of left field, but yes, I understand where you're coming from. Don't worry about it.
All right. I think we've answered everybody's question. We did have one person that had their hand raised, but I think she may have left. Let me see. Yeah, I think she's probably off. We probably answered the questions. So again, thank you all for attending. If you do have any other questions, feel free to send me an email, and I'll definitely do my best to answer your questions. We are definitely looking forward to seeing you all in Baltimore. And again, if you didn't receive your information, If you didn't, we have a couple of more questions. Hold, one more question. Sorry about that. Will there be patients over the age of 60?
Um, uh,
Considering geriatric patients or Bears List information.
yeah, I know. On this one, I'll say it's a possibility.
All right. So thank you, everybody, for attending again, and we look forward to seeing you in Baltimore. Have a good evening.
Have a good evening, folks. Bye-bye.